പാർത്ഥായ പ്രതിബോധിതാം ഭഗവത നാരായണേന സ്വയം വ്യാസേന ഗ്രഥിതാം പുരാണമുനിന മധ്യേ മഹാഭാരതം അദ്വൈതാമൃതവർഷിണീം ഭഗവതി അഷ്ടാദശാധ്യായിനി അംബ ത്വാമനുസന്ധധാമി ഭഗവദ്ഗീതേ ഭവദ്വേഷിണീ. നമോസ്തുതേ വ്യാസവിശാലബുദ്ധേ ഭുല്ലാരവിന്ദായതപത്രനേത്ര യേന ത്വയാ ഭാരതതൈലപൂർണ പ്രജ്വാലിതോ ജ്ഞാനമയപ്രദീപ പ്രപന്നപാരിജാതായ സ്തോത്രവേത്രൈകപാണയേ ജ്ഞാനമുദ്രായ കൃഷ്ണായ ഗീതാമൃതദുഹേ നമഃ. സർവോപനിഷദോ ഗാവോ ധോക്താ ഗോപാലനന്ദന പാർത്ഥോ വത്സസുധീർഭോക്താ ദുഗ്ധം ഗീതാമൃതം മഹത്. വസുദേവസുതം ദേവം കംസചാണൂരമർദനം ദേവകീ പരമാനന്ദം കൃഷ്ണം വന്ദേ ജഗദ്ഗുരും. ഭീഷ്മദ്രോണതടാജയദ്രഥജല ഗാന്ധാരനീലോത്പല ശല്യഗ്രാഹവതീ കൃപേണ വഹനി കർണേന വേലാകുല അശ്വത്ഥാമവികർണഘോരമകര ദുര്യോധനാവർത്തിനി സോത്തീർണാ ഖലു പാണ്ഡവൈരണനതി കൈവർത്തക കേശവ. പാരാശര്യവചസരോജമമലം ഗീതാർത്ഥഗന്ധോത്കടം നാനാഖ്യാനകേസരം ഹരികഥ സംബോധനാബോധിതം. ലോകേ സജ്ജനഷട്പദൈരഹരഃ പേവീയമാനം മുദാ ഭൂയാത് ഭാരതപങ്കജം കലിമലപ്രധ്വംസിന ശ്രേയസേ. മൂകം കരോതി വാചാലം പങ്കും ലംഘയതേ ഗിരിം യത്കൃപാതമഹം വന്ദേ പരമാനന്ദമാധവം. യം ബ്രഹ്മാ വരുണേന്ദ്രരുദ്രമരുതസ്തുന്വന്തി ദിവ്യൈസ്തവൈ വേദൈ സാംഗപദക്രമോപനിഷദൈർഗായന്തി യം സാമഗ. ധ്യാനാവസ്ഥിതതദ്ഗതേന മനസാ പശ്യന്തി യം യോഗിനോ യസ്യാന്തം ന വിദുഃസുരാസുരഗണ. ദേവായ തസ്മൈ നമഃ ദേവായ തസ്മൈ നമഃ ദേവായ തസ്മൈ നമഃ. ഹരി ഓം. We are now going through the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Arjuna as a great warrior, Yodha. Arjuna as a Yodha, he had fought many battles, and this is not the first time Arjuna is coming to a war field. So Arjuna in the Mahabharata war, he had come to the battlefield with a very firm resolve and sense of duty also, correct? As a Kshatriyan, as a Yodha, the primary Dharma is to follow or have the sense of duty. And we should also understand that being a warrior, being a Kshatriya, fighting is always in the blood of Arjuna. And when we say fighting, the stage of Mahabharata war, Yuddha, came as a consequence of many negotiations or the influencing avenues or capabilities that Pandavas and Krishna tried out with the Kauravas, right? Pandavas and Krishna, they pitched their claims to Kauravas at the minimum, the bare minimal. And Bhagavan Krishna, he himself had tried to mediate these discussions, mediate these conversations. And in Mahabharata, we can see that when we say they came to the bare minimum, give 5 villages. Forget about the kingdom, it's okay. So that is the context we have to understand. War has come as the last option. And now there is no other way. And all the mediations or all the conversations did not materialize meaningfully. Correct? That is where this war became inevitable. This is the context. It is not something like all of a sudden, the context of war has come. There are many, aspects that we need to understand. So now Arjuna is asking Bhagavan Krishna to place his chariot between the two armies, so that Arjuna thinks that I can have a look at the people who have assembled here, who are going to fight with me. So here Arjuna looks around, and what happens? He is finding his own kin and kith, his own people. So with a bold determination, Arjuna came to the war field. Now what is happening? Attachment to his own people clouded his sense of duty. So Arjuna Vishada Yogam is all about Arjuna's despondency. Arjuna felt so despondent and never had his bow, Gandivam, slipping from his hands. Never had he trembled so far, right? If you see all the wars that Arjuna participated, he never had tears. So why it is happening all of a sudden? A man with a sense of duty is caught in delusion. And now Arjuna is trying to justify his own weakness by citing a lot amount of principles. Now he started putting before Bhagavan Krishna those principles and trying to convince Bhagavan Krishna with all his spacious arguments. What is that he is trying to convey or convince? This war is sinful. This would destroy the entire clan, Kuru Vamsha. It will eclipse the Dharma, it will eclipse the righteousness, the right way of living. It will lead to a moral anarchy. It will lead to scarcity of the resources, after a war. It will lead to devastations. It would bring, the kind of consequences that we cannot think in the society to his Vamsham. See, at this point, I would like to bring a story here. There comes the story of a famous judge, very, very famous judge. So this story basically is trying to, illustrate the conflict that is happening in the judge. Conflict between what? Conflict between the personal attachment and principles of justice. This judge is very famous. He had sentenced to death hundreds of criminals. But one day, when his own son was produced in the court before him, who was accused of murder, the same judge, then he started hesitating and started arguing that the death sentence is inhuman. This story is trying to bring the point of a selective empathy here. A judge who is really famous for justice, and in this case the true justice is not coming out, and there is an impartiality coming here in the place of true justice. If such kind of selective empathy happens, then where is the room for a true justice? So this will just become a tool of convenience rather than a pillar of a fairness, isn't it? When you are supposed to do your moral duty, and if you are bringing a selective empathy there, it can be a number of instances that happens in our life. So similarly, Arjuna's condition is like of that judge in this story. So his arguments are not logical. With the fair determination, he came to the war field, and now he is finding lame excuses and saying that the war is going to be sinful. So his arguments are not logical. His arguments are not authentic. So, and his build as a Kshatriya, war or fighting has to be natural. Correct? And this is inescapable. But he is trying to evade the duty. Evade the duty under the spell of delusion. We can say it's an anti-Swadharma delusion. Running away from the moral duty. So what is the way? The only way is to dispel the delusion. Only way is to understand what is really obstructing one from recognizing and fulfilling the Swadharma, one's own rightful duty. And one's own rightful duty in alignment with his or her own nature and evolution. Why I am saying his or her own nature and evolution? In case of Arjuna, as a Yodha, his rightful duty is to protect. And it is in alignment with his own nature and evolution. So Arjuna's issue is what? Arjuna's issue is basically the confusion, lack of clarity. Confusion rooted in the personal attachment and trying to run away from the duty, trying to run away from the responsibility. So what is the solution? Bring clarity. If mind is clouded, bring the right clarity. That is what Bhagavan Krishna is trying to do. Bhagavan Krishna starts giving the Upadesham from the second chapter, Bhagavan Krishna restores Arjuna's clarity. Is just restoring the clarity. Now it is clouded. So Bhagavan is trying to uncloud Arjuna. The wrong thinkings, wrong accumulation of the thinkings, going to unwind or uncloud. So here the charioteer, the Sarathi, the Buddhi, the intelligence. Who is the charioteer here for Arjuna? Bhagavan Krishna. That intelligence is within all of us. And if you see the chariot, what is the representation? What is the chariot allegory? Atmanam redhinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu. So we have seen that in the Kadhopanishad. This body is the chariot, kshetram. And Buddhi is the kshetrajnan. Who is the Buddhi? Who is the charioteer? Who is the guide? Bhagavan Krishna. He is the kshetrajnan. In the Bhagavad Gita, we can see the kshetrajna vibhage yoga. So Devi is also worshipped as kshetrajna palini. So the mind and the senses, horses. The mind is the reins. If we don't control the mind, if the mind is not directed properly with the intellect, it will take our life to a toss. That is where the Vijnana Sarathi, Bhagavan Krishna as the Vijnana Sarathi, who is restoring Arjuna's clarity. Other side, if you see Duryodhana and the Kauravas, where they are driven primarily by the unchecked greed and self-interest. The selfishness is ruling them. That is where they go towards doing unethical actions, exploit others, do whatever they feel, bringing a kind of an imbalance in the social structure. See, that is the fundamental reason for the Mahabharata Yuddha. So in our lives also, always this kind of conflicts happen. The sadvasanas and the durvasanas. Sometimes, if the mind is not controlled, if we rely completely on the outside world without having the inner strength or inner control, and if our greed or interest is not checked properly, how the checking will happen? Even we are in association with the right Sarathi, with the right intellect. And where is that intellect? That intellect is within the chariot, within us. As Bhagavan Krishna. So with this, let us get into the verses. Now we will start with verse number 30.
In this case, we are talking about Kshetram, Kshetrajan. Then Kshetraja Palan is the consciousness, really?
Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Palini.
Palini. So Kshetraja Palan means it is the consciousness.
Yes, is the consciousness.
Okay.
Now verse number 38. Verse number 37 in some text books, in some of the versions. Yadyapyedena pashyanti लोभो बहदच्छेदसा कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम् कथं न ज्ञेयमस्माभिः पापादस्मान्निवर्तितुं कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन यद्यपि एते न पश्यन्ति लोभोपहतचेतसा लोभ उपहतचेतसा कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकं कथं न ज्ञेयम् अस्माभिः पापात् अस्मात् निवर्तितुं कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भि जनार्दन. So here we know the greed of Duryodhana, right? Due to the greed, the buddhi is overclouded, and Duryodhana doesn't have the freedom to foresee the sin of destroying own clan, own race, and being malicious and unfaithful to everyone. So a wicked person enjoying, hurting and carrying out these heinous activities towards their own people as they are devoid of mercy. So they are not bothered. They are not bothered by the horror of war. And what will happen actually? Kulakshayagridam dosham mitra drohe cha padagam. So this war will lead to lot of unwanted consequences. And Arjuna is trying to list all those. But Arjuna is deluded. Arjuna's mind is now uncontrolled. Arjuna's mind is not under the influence of intellect. That is why Arjuna is trying to blabber all those things. In fact, these things he would be aware before the war also. So this war will lead to the breakup of family, resulting in many consequences. Right. So we will see this. Kulakshaye pranashyandi kuladharma sanatanaha dharme nashte kulam krishnam adharmo abhibhavatyuda adharma abhibhavad krishna pradushyanti kulastriya Srishu dushta suvashneya jayade varna sangaraha sankaro narakayaiva kulaknanam kulasya cha padandi pidaro hesham lupta pindodagakriya doshairetai kulaknanam varna sangaragaragai उत्साद्यन्ते जाति धर्म कुल धर्माश्च शाश्वता उत्सन्न कुल धर्माणां मनुष्याणां जनार्दन नरके नियतं वासा भवतीत्यनुशुश्रुमा अहो बद महत्पापं कर्तुं व्यवसिदा वयं यद् राज्यस् Sukhalobhena handum swajanamudyada. So this war will lead to the destruction of the society. It will break up the entire family, entire clan, resulting in Srishu Dushtasu Ashneya Jayade Varna Sankara. So all those problems like breakup of family resulting in many widows, many orphans. All these evils will come from the war. And the Kauravas, they don't know these consequences. So when we know these things, why should we proceed in this matter? Hey Krishna, this is the question Arjuna is asking, right? And now Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanadana dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo abhibhavatyuda sangaro naragayeva kulaknanam kulasya padanti pidaro hesham lupta pindodaga kriya. Many things. He piles on more and more reasonings as to why we should not fight. The sudden outburst of compassion and willingness to sacrifice for others appear in Arjuna. And Arjuna's arguments are very much in the personal plane only. And his thinking is clouded, his thinking is deluded. Why? Due to the affection towards his people. And this affection is creating the affliction. Affection has become the barrier. So if the men who fight in the battle are killed, the culture will erode, the tradition will perish. And with that degeneration, correct, immorality will rise, adharmam will increase. It will also corrupt the women. It will corrupt the women. It will lead to, here it's mentioned as Varna Sankara, correct? Vashneya Jayade Varna Sankara, meaning the intermingling of the caste. When we say intermingling of the caste, the guna, based on the gunas of the people, there can be the intermingling happen. The Varna Sankaram happens. That will lead to the downfall of the society and family. That will slay the lineage. It will also lead to, the lack of people who will be able to do the Lupta Pindodaga Kriya. So basically the traditional rites, the Udaga Kriya. Because there will not be people to do that. So those things will vanish. So what happens as a consequence? People will start abandoning the dharmic traditions. So this will lead to severe consequences. After effects of the war will be very unpleasant, Krishna. So let us not do that. Aho bada mahat pabam kartum vyavasidavayam yad rajya sukha lobhena handum sojana mudyata yedi mama pradigaram ashastram shastrapanaya dharta rashtrarane hanyu tanme kshemadaram bhaved. So Aho veda mahat pabam kartum vyavasidavayam yad rajya sukha lobhena handum sojanam udyata yedi mama pradigaram ashastram shastrapanaya dharta rashtrarane hanyu tanme kshemadaram bhaved. Now Arjuna is trying to conclude his monologue, because this is not a dialogue. He alone is talking. Bhagavan Krishna is silent. Bhagavan Krishna is actively listening, empathetically listening to Arjuna. So that is why it is a long monologue. Arjuna only is talking. What is the point? Arjuna is again and again saying that this is a great sin to kill one's near and dear ones. And for what? For a trivial material pleasure such as getting the kingdom back. In order to get the kingdom back, only this got started. Now Arjuna is concluding the very big monologue by re-emphasizing that, hey Krishna, this is a great sin to kill my own dear and near people. And for what? Just for a trivial material pleasure such as getting back the kingdom. Hence, I would not fight. Not only that, here I will not even lift the weapon. Let them kill me. I would not fight. Let them kill me if they wish to. And I shall stand here as unarmed, ashastram, and I will allow it to happen. Let them kill me. I would rather become a martyr than have the blood of the people, my own people, right? Blood of my own people on my hands. So rather than becoming that, I will become, or I will not fight, I will give up my astram, ayudham, and let them kill me. So here Arjuna is trying to adopt an unqualified non-violence. And Arjuna is now overwhelmed by sorrow, by dejection. Now, coming to the last verse of the first chapter. Now Sanjaya reports to Dhritarashtra in this next verse. Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva Arjuna sankhe redhopasta upavishad visrujya sasaram chapam shoka samvigna manasa evam uktva Arjuna sankhe redha upasta upavishad visrujya sa sharam chapam shoga samvigna manasa. So, speaking thus in the midst of the battlefield, Arjuna, what happens? Casting away, Arjuna is casting away his bow and arrow. He got depressed. He sank down on his seat, on the seat of his chariot, with his Shoga Samvigna Manasa, with his mind distressed with sorrow. So this is the commentary Sanjaya is giving. So the deluded Arjuna, sank down and took the seat in his chariot with the mind distressed with sorrow. So here, first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So here, the first chapter is ending with what? Is it in a good note? So the first chapter ends with delusion, grief, sorrow. Right? So here Arjuna, though he tries to bring the arguments of kindness, compassion, non-violence, etc. In this context, the question can be asked like this: is this non-violence a great virtue? That is where Bhagavan Krishna says this non-violence at this context is not a virtue. And doesn't mean that non-violence is a virtue in every case. And Arjuna thinks that he is doing a good deed and giving up fighting. He is trying to withdraw from his Dharma. What is happening here in Arjuna? Arjuna is just relying upon his mind, only on his mind, and making these decisions. And deluded completely, and deluded by the demanding situation that confronts him. So sometimes, in our lives also we gets into a state of dejection or a delusion. What is really needed at that point of time? The very first step that we all need when we are in this kind of delusion, confusion, dilemma is basically we need to awaken. We need to listen to the Sarathi. We need to listen to the intellect. Because the mind, with the influence of the senses, trying to conclude, that is what is happening in Arjuna's case. Not listening to the intellect, only listening to the mind. In Arjuna's case, he understood the problem, because that is where the first step is basically awakening. A clouded mind is there in Arjuna, and Arjuna understood that my thoughts are clouded, my thinking is clouded. That awakening has happened in Arjuna. Because the real Sarathi, Krishna, is there. He is guiding. And Krishna as a Sarathi, always listening very actively. Not even, there is no Bhagavan Uvaja, Sri Bhagavan Uvaja coming in the first chapter. Where is Bhagavan? Where is Sarathi? He is in the chariot. He is the Vijnana Sarathi. And when the Vijnana Sarathi will start playing the role, when the intelligence will start playing the role, the intelligence shines forth only when a person surrenders unconditionally to that Sarathi, unconditionally to the intellect, unconditionally to the Lord. So this awakening is needed, right? The first step is basically awakening. I am clouded, I am not having clarity. God, please give me the right directions. So when there is a sincere surrender, a true surrender has to happen. And when we say surrender, surrender is the strength. Surrender is not a weakness. Prabhati or Sharanagati is the strength. It is not the weakness. And for doing Sharanagati or Prabhati or true bhakti or true surrender, one should have the purity, one should have the common sense, one should have the purity of the mind. So here Arjuna is completely depressed. From the state of depression to enlightenment of Arjuna has to happen. That is where even the first chapter is the Arjuna Vishada Yogam. Yogam. What is Yogam? Yogam is basically the path of liberation. Yogam is the path of Kaivalyam. Yogam is the path of the oneness with the God. Goal of yoga is basically the path of liberation, the oneness with the God. Yoga is basically the transition from sense indulgence to self-control. Yoga is the transition from mental turbulence or mental distractions or mental inclination to discriminative intelligence. Yoga is the journey from the lower ego nature to the higher consciousness. So here when we say Arjuna in the battlefield, we all are in the battlefield of our life. We all are in the battlefield of actions. Our human body is undergoing the field of actions daily, where the conflicting forces always come into play. So when we say conflicting forces, the world says incline your mind towards that. Inclination of the mind to the world is called as the lower mind. Versus the inner conscience says incline towards me, incline towards the discriminative intelligence. The conflicting forces always will come. When we try to not do something, the inner conscience says that don't do that. But the mental pull will say, hey, what is this? Nothing. Others are doing and this is the way forward. This kind of conflicts always happen in each one of us. So when the mind is at the lower plane of intelligence, when the mind is completely controlled by the senses, it is called as a blind mind. So a blind mind cannot cognize. It neither cognizes nor exerts guidance. A blind mind always is confused, like it receives impressions from the senses and takes conclusion. And if the mind is controlled by the buddhi, if the mind is governed by the discriminative power, then the senses will become controlled. And the mind cannot be ruled by the materialistic desires. See, if you see the horses, the chariot allegory here, if the horses are not controlled, if the senses are not controlled, what has to control the senses? The mind. And the mind should be under the guidance of a discriminative power, the intellect, the sarathi. Otherwise, what will happen? The horses go wild. They are uncontrolled. They are unruly. So here, Bhagavad Gita as a Shastram reflects not just the historic battle, Mahabharata Yuddha, but it reflects the conflict between the good and evil. Between good and evil, between knowledge and ignorance, between self-control and temptations. So here in the first chapter, if you see all these 46 verses, first few set the context, set the scene of Mahabharata Yuddha. Then comes the Duryodhana's assessment about the armies, etc. Then blowing the conches. Then the real inner conflict happening in Arjuna. And ultimately we have seen the collapse of Arjuna. So what is that we have to have in life out of this story? First is basically awakening is needed when we are confused, when we are clouded, when we are not able to take rational decisions. So the first and foremost quality is basically introspection as a quality. Introspection as the first quality that we should have in life. And the war is again, you can consider this as war between good, evil, good traits, bad traits, war between material world and the moral world, war between the uncontrolled mind and the controlled mind, or the mind which has an inclination towards the intellect. The war between the lower state of the mind and the higher state of the mind. When we say lower state of the mind which has drifted from the consciousness, which has drifted from the intellect, and the higher state of mind, meaning which has associated with the consciousness. So the whole journey of human beings is again, it is the evolution from Naran to Narayanan, raising our level of strength within us. In Malayalam, we have heard Padiyarum Kadan Avade Chellumbol Shivane Kana Shivane Kana, correct? Shivane Kana, Shiva Shambho. Shivane Kana, Padiyarum Kadana.
Shivane Kana.
Padiyarum Kadannu avade chellumbol. So what are these padi? These padi are basically the ladders of evolution. If you see the chakram, the starting from the Mooladharam to Swadhishtanam to Manipuragam to Anahadam to Vishuddham to Ajna, it's evolution actually. Or if you see from the Panchakosha Viveka, the Annamayam, Pranamayam, Manomayam, Vijnanamayam, Anandamayam. So life is all about, when I said surrender as the first one, the mind has to be worked upon. That is where all those virtues that we have to bring in our mind. The Shadka Sambhati, for example, the sixfold virtues, Samam, Dhammam, Uparati, Tidiksha, Shraddha, Samadhana, right? The tranquility of mind, sense control, capability to withdraw from the things, from the external world, the capability to endure things in life, that we will see in the next chapter, Tidiksha. Tidiksha is the forbearance or the capability that we all should have. Then Shraddha, the faith. Samadhanam, the concentration. Right? Or if you see the Ashtanga Yoga, the eight limb yoga, Yamam, right? Yama Niyamadigal. When you say Yamam, it's all disciplines. Niyama is all about personal capabilities or the observances that one should follow. Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, Brahmacharyam, Aparigraham. And in the Niyamam is Shaujam, Sandosham, Tapasa, Swadhyayam, Ishara Pranidhanam. Then the asana, meaning the right postures. Then the pranayamam, the breathing control. Pratyaharam, the withdrawal of senses from the external world. Dharana, the concentration, the capability to concentrate, capability to focus in the inner strength, capability to associate with the inner power, capability to focus on your Ishtadevata. Dhyana, the real meditation, the real flow of energy. And Samadhi. Samadhi is basically the liberation. So these are the kind of, the virtues we should have. That is where the mind becomes tamed. Otherwise, what will happen is basically an untamed mind is the abode of impure ego. And the untamed mind will maintain the delusion. So, This is a problem of Arjuna now, right? The impure ego has played or has taken control there. That is why the delusion came. So every day, that is where introspection is important. And second thing is, every day we are getting the glimpse of connecting with that greater truth in our deep sleep. We are becoming renunciant there because there is no identity in the deep sleep. There is no possession, there is no possessor. Everything plunges into that great reality. Correct? And during the Jagrada and Swapnam, those pleasures were ruling, right? And those pleasures now become inferior in the deep sleep because you are enjoying the everlasting joy there. Though there is an absence of knowledge because we are not knowing, so all the inferior pleasures are overcome here with the everlasting joy in the deep sleep. That is where in deep sleep we get the revitalization. So this is a great, avenue for us, the deep sleep. The daily we are undergoing the sleep, the process of sleeping. We are touching that reality. We are not knowing this because the absence of knowledge is there in the deep sleep. So when we are awakened or when we are awake, this is the kind of a revitalization we should bring in life. This is the kind of a recognition that we should bring in life. So Gita Shastram is going to equip us. We have not started receiving the wisdom. So the first chapter is all about the Vishada Yoga. So Srimad Bhagavad Gita, our Shastram, is basically giving a great hope to all of us. Wherever you are living, right? In wherever you are living, whatever you are doing, in the midst of our circle of family or friends or whatever you are doing, wherever in which country you are, no problem. You learn to see the truth. And seeing the truth is the ultimate aim in life. And for seeing the truth, we have to perfectly still our mind. And when the mind is still, we are that truth. We are with that source of all joy and security. And that is called as the real self. Finding that truth is the ultimate purpose in our life. So, living in the middle of our circle, and Arjuna as a Yodha, as a warrior, he has to execute his Swadharmam. So, whatever job or work you do in life, wherever you are, what sort of company you have, what sort of circle you are with, what sort of family, what sort of friends, never mind. You convert your life as yogam. And this is the wisdom that Bhagavad Gita is giving. Idi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Pradamodhyaya.